ശരി ശരി
കുത്ത് ശരി ശരി അപ്പോൾ അത് നല്ലതാണ്.
This is Alicia Andrews, and yes, your eyes aren't deceiving you. She's casually touching up her makeup right there in court, totally composed. Then came the moment that left everyone stunned.
15 മിനിറ്റ് കൂടി. അതെ.
When the judge delivered her life sentence, the entire room froze. Her calm reactions silenced the crowd. That faint smile carried a chilling undertone. Behind the headlines stood a far more unsettling reality. The scene unfolded in Tampa, Florida, where 22-year-old Alicia Andrews faces accusations of being the lookout in the planned killing of Jacksonville rapper Foolio, known legally as Charles Jones. Her courtroom demeanor exploded across social media, sparking fierce debate about whether this young woman truly comprehends the seriousness of her alleged crime or simply feels indifferent. The story has gripped the nation, not only due to the fame of the victim, a rapper whose drill lyrics mirror Jacksonville's violent gang conflicts, but because of the defendant herself. Andrews, the lone woman among 5 charged suspects in the deadly ambush, has become the face of a trial merging themes of street warfare, toxic romance, and the catastrophic aftermath of decisions made in fleeting moments that linger for generations. To grasp what led here, we need to start from the beginning. Understanding who Alicia Andrews once was before June 23, 2024, is key to piecing this together. Born February 9, 2003, Alicia L. Andrews grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, a city now infamous for its relentless wave of gang violence fueled by the intense culture surrounding drill rap. But what truly makes her story compelling, and heartbreakingly complex, is the contrast between her and her co-defendants. Unlike the 4 men charged beside her, Alicia shows no history of gang connections at all. Yet, this is where the accounts sharply divide, with prosecutors and defense lawyers presenting opposing portrayals of who she really is. The prosecution's version is harsh and direct. Alicia was an active participant in a calculated murder plan. They allege she traveled from Jacksonville to Tampa on June 22, 2024, fully aware violence was coming. According to them, she served as the lookout, tracking Foolio's every movement that night, from a disrupted Airbnb pool party to local clubs, and ultimately to the Home 2 Suites hotel where he was gunned down. Using her phone, they claim, she transmitted live updates to the shooters, Sean Gathright, Rashard Murphy, and Dave Murphy, helping them stage the perfect hit around 4:42 a.m. Prosecutors cite damning evidence, surveillance clips, phone logs, and tower data placing her at each location. They argue she misled police after her arrest to obscure her role. And unlike the armed, masked gunman, she stood in plain sight, weaponless, because her task didn't require one. Her part, prosecutors argue, was vital though understated: the observer, the coordinator, the one ensuring the shooters knew exactly when and where to act. But the defense presents a completely opposite interpretation, one portraying Alicia not as a scheming conspirator but as someone manipulated and frightened. Her lawyer, Life Malcolm, contends that she was unaware of any murder intentions. In their retelling, the trip to Tampa wasn't a criminal mission but an attempt to reconcile romantically with her volatile partner, Isaiah Chance Jr. The defense insists their relationship was toxic and controlling, marked by emotional manipulation that blurred her judgment. They argue she was coerced, operating under pressure without fully realizing the danger surrounding her. Now, let's examine the charges themselves, because knowing what Alicia faces reveals why this case has drawn so much attention, and why her demeanor in court stunned onlookers. She's accused of first-degree premeditated murder with a firearm and conspiracy to commit the same. These are among the gravest charges possible in U.S. law. A guilty verdict on either count means life behind bars. Everything she might have achieved, every dream she once held, could vanish forever, ending before her adulthood truly began.
This is Mr. Jones arriving. He's been out celebrating, you will find in the evidence. That is Mr. Jones with that open passenger door. The vapor you're seeing is coming out of the hotel. That's some type of a dryer vent. Mr. Jones in the red stocking cap pulling up his shorts. He walks in the hotel. As you can see on the timestamp, which is slightly off by a few minutes, this is about 4:30 in the morning.
However, there's one key difference separating Alicia from her co-defendants that's important to highlight. Unlike some of them, she cannot be given the death penalty or receive gang-related sentence enhancements because she lacks any gang affiliation. This detail carries major weight. Florida remains one of the few states that still enforces capital punishment regularly, and at least one of her co-defendants, Dave Murphy, is currently facing that possibility. The prosecution's decision not to pursue the death sentence for Alicia can be read in several ways. Perhaps as acknowledgement that her involvement was less severe than those who actually pulled the trigger, or simply because her absence of gang ties eliminates one of the aggravating circumstances that often triggers capital punishment eligibility. But what makes this entire case both compelling and unsettling is how little connection Alicia had to Julio Foolio. There's no proof or public record showing she ever interacted with him personally. She didn't know the man. There was no direct conflict, no personal vendetta, no feud between them. She wasn't part of the long-standing gang dispute that had dominated Jacksonville streets for nearly 10 years. Her alleged role stemmed solely from her relationship with Isaiah Chance Jr. and the violent cycle surrounding him, one that had absolutely nothing to do with her before she got involved. These are the questions the Tampa jury must wrestle with, and the answers are far from simple. What's confirmed is that Alicia Andrews was arrested in July 2024, roughly a month after Julio Foolio's murder, becoming the first among the 5 charged suspects to go to trial. The trial opened on October 22, 2025, more than a year after the deadly shooting, and from the start, it was obvious this would be no ordinary courtroom scene. According to numerous media outlets and online posts, Alicia appeared to be laughing and smiling, particularly before the lawyers began their opening statements. Clips spread across social platforms, showing her in unexpectedly high spirits, as though she were at a casual gathering instead of a courtroom fighting for her future. But what followed was even more startling. Several witnesses reported seeing Andrews calmly applying makeup and lipstick during proceedings, occasionally with the help of her attorney while sitting before the judge. Picture that moment, a young woman accused of murder, touching up her face as if preparing for a night out, while her fate hangs in the balance. The public backlash came instantly and ferociously. Online commentators flooded timelines with reactions labeling her behavior arrogant, detached, and disrespectful toward the victim and the seriousness of the case. Fans of Julio Foolio voiced outrage, interpreting her composure as mockery of his memory. Some observers suggested her attitude reflected misplaced confidence, that she truly believed she could beat the charges despite damning evidence. Others believed it was psychological, a coping mechanism born of trauma, masking fear with indifference. That possibility added another layer to the debate. Still, the most chilling moment came during the state's opening presentation. Observers reported that Andrews smirked when prosecutors displayed a photo showing Julio Foolio crouched in the backseat of his vehicle, attempting to avoid gunfire. That fleeting expression was noted on the record and, to many, marked a disturbing shift, from detached to openly cold. The image depicted a man's final attempt to escape a storm of bullets, a desperate fight for survival. And the woman accused of helping set that ambush seemed to find the tragedy oddly amusing. Still, her attorneys maintained that she had no awareness of any murder plans and was emotionally controlled by her abusive boyfriend, Isaiah Chance Jr. Within that narrative, her nonchalant courtroom behavior could strengthen the defense's image of her as a manipulated partner rather than a willing conspirator. If she genuinely sees herself as innocent, if she truly never imagined her actions would lead to someone's death, her confidence might stem from that belief, not cruelty. Yet, her lawyers have avoided directly explaining her demeanor in court, leaving public opinion divided over what those smiles and gestures really signify. As for the victim, Julio Foolio, born Charles Andrew Jones II, he was a 26-year-old Jacksonville rapper linked to the 6-block set of the KTA Kill Them All gang, a figure deeply embedded in the city's violent street wars that inspired much of his music. To truly grasp who he was and why his death drew such massive attention, you have to understand that Foolio wasn't just another rapper tied to the streets. He stood at the center of one of the most infamous, most publicized, and most lethal gang rivalries in recent U.S. history. A war fought not only on Jacksonville's pavement but also across the internet and music platforms that racked up tens of millions of views. Foolio rose to prominence through drill rap, a genre infamous for its brutal honesty and dark, threatening tone. Drill, which emerged in Chicago during the early 2010s, is recognized for bleak storytelling, violent themes, and menacing production. What separates drill from other rap forms, and makes it so polarizing, is its realism. The lyrics aren't coded or poetic metaphors. They're raw documentation of genuine street violence, often calling out actual names, referencing real killings, and sometimes daring enemies with open threats. The feud that ultimately led to Foolio's murder mainly involved the ATK group, short for Ace's Top Killers, led by rapper Youngeen Ace, born Kenyatta Bullard. ATK later formed an alliance with the 1200 crew, forging a formidable front against Foolio's 6-block KTA faction. And this wasn't a short-term dispute that flared up and faded. This vendetta stretched for more than 10 years, claiming lives from both sides with devastating frequency. To understand how someone like Alicia Andrews, who had no gang background or violent past, ended up entangled in this storm of revenge, we need to trace the roots. The hostility began around 2014, initially sparked by Foolio's falling out with the Head First gang. But the true war with ATK exploded in 2017. On February 5th that year, Foolio's cousin Zion Brown was robbed by Deantree Trey Shorty Thomas, a known ATK member. What looked like a petty street robbery turned into the first domino in a deadly sequence that would claim dozens of victims over the next 7 years. A few months later, on May 27, 2017, Trey Shorty shot and killed Zion Brown during a home invasion, an act that formally ignited the KTA versus ATK conflict dominating Jacksonville streets ever since. From that moment on, retaliation became the unending rhythm of life. Every death triggered another. Every burial invited revenge. Funerals weren't moments of closure. They were promises of more bloodshed. The most notorious example came with Young Ace's viral hit Who I Smoke, released in March 2021. Sampling Vanessa Carlton's soft piano ballad 1,000 Miles, the record transformed gentle pop into a chilling taunt, mocking slain KTA members by name and turning mourning into entertainment. The track's success was explosive, shocking even those inside the scene. The song's popularity skyrocketed, drawing national eyes to Jacksonville's deadly feud and effectively turning real homicides into viral spectacle. The chorus brazenly listed dead rivals, asking who I smoke, slang for celebrating a slain enemy. Foolio refused to stay silent. 1 month later, in April 2021, he dropped his rebuttal When I See You, filmed directly at his adversaries' gravesites, literally dancing atop tombstones of ATK members while taunting their loved ones. It was the height of provocation, an act so disrespectful it stunned even hardened fans. Imagine that, walking into a cemetery, finding the headstones of people who wanted you dead, and using them as props for a diss track. That level of audacity turned the feud into folklore. To grasp how Foolio's killing fit within this escalating saga, you have to follow the timeline. On June 5, 2018, Young Ace was ambushed outside a steakhouse. He survived, but his brother Trayvon Bullard and 2 friends were killed. That night reshaped everything. Foolio responded by posting online content mocking their deaths, deepening the rage of ATK and ensuring the endless cycle would roll on. Each provocation begot retaliation, and by 2024, the violence that started with street pride had become a generational blood feud that would ultimately cost Foolio his life. On July 23, 2018, Lawrence Trey D. Davis III, known as Foolio's enforcer, was shot and killed at a neighborhood block party by ATK gunmen. Then, on January 16, 2019, Foolio's cousin, Willie Boscoon Addison, was murdered on Interstate 95. Foolio later posted about the incident online, seemingly admitting responsibility, a shocking public confession that showed how normalized violence had become in this feud. A month later, on February 25, 2019, Foolio's close associate, Adrian Lil BBY Gaynor, was gunned down outside his apartment by ATK shooter Kasu. That killing led to real arrests and criminal charges, suggesting that authorities were finally beginning to catch up with at least some of the participants in Jacksonville's bloody gang scene. Yet, the cycle of killings didn't let up. In January 2020, Charles Lil Buck McCormick Jr., Foolio's right-hand man, was slain in a drive-by. Only months later, Foolio's girlfriend survived a shooting in May. Then, on July 6, 2020, Foolio himself was shot and wounded in Houston, Texas, after carelessly revealing his location online, a near-fatal error that should have been a warning about the dangers of living publicly while enemies hunted him. Still, the gunfire never stopped. In November 2021, he was shot again while driving through Jacksonville's Riverside area. And by October 2023, tensions exploded further when Foolio allegedly offered a $20,000 bounty that led to the murder of ATK member Antonio Tilley Jr. that same night. Foolio narrowly escaped death once more, surviving yet another drive-by shooting, though he was struck in the foot. The man seemed indestructible, surviving attempt after attempt while those around him kept falling. But that streak would end on June 23, 2024, the day Julio Foolio's luck finally collapsed. He was in Tampa, Florida, celebrating his 26th birthday, far from Jacksonville's chaos. Perhaps he thought putting distance between himself and old enemies would bring peace. The evening began at an Airbnb pool party that police eventually shut down. Afterward, Foolio and his circle moved through several nightclubs before checking into the Home 2 Suite Hotel during the early morning hours. Around 4:42 a.m., the violence he'd spent years evading caught up to him in the hotel parking lot. Surveillance video and eyewitnesses described multiple masked shooters emerging from a car, firing modified AR-style rifles equipped with brass catchers, attachments designed to trap spent shell casings so they never hit the ground, complicating forensic recovery. That detail alone proved how calculated the operation was. This wasn't spontaneous rage or drunken revenge. It was a methodical execution. Prosecutors called it a hellish storm of fire, a phrase that wasn't exaggeration but precise description. The video footage, played for jurors, captured the chilling reality of what unfolded, a meticulously coordinated ambush fueled by vengeance and precision, executed with military-like planning and brutal efficiency. 3 masked shooters took tactical positions around Foolio's Dodge Charger, creating a deadly trap of overlapping fire. One stood near the front corner, aiming a Glock pistol. Another crept up behind a row of cars, crouching near a yellow vehicle between a Mercedes and Foolio's ride. A third attacker flanked from across the street. When they opened fire, the assault lasted only 10 to 30 seconds, but those seconds unleashed a hurricane of bullets. Xavier Edwards, the driver and sole survivor, tried frantically to escape but swerved straight into the crossfire from the opposite gunman. The Charger bolted north along the hotel's west lot, riddled with holes. After the shooting, Tampa police photos showed the car peppered with bullet marks, tiny yellow evidence stickers covering the hood, sides, and windshield. 2 shots even shattered the back window, right where passenger Ultima Camila Bentley had been sitting. Considering the sheer amount of gunfire and precision of the setup, it's almost unbelievable that anyone walked away alive. Julio Foolio wasn't one of them. He was pronounced dead on the scene. The 26-year-old artist who had survived countless ambushes, who chronicled violence in his lyrics, and who embodied both aggressor and casualty in Jacksonville's rap wars, was finally silenced for good. In the aftermath, young Guinness released a song titled Game Over, a grim celebration mocking his rival's death, ensuring the chain of disrespect continued even after the grave closed. But the killing didn't mark the end. Merely 5 days later, on June 28, 2024, ATK member Darius Fizzle Bayels was slain in what investigators labeled a revenge hit for Foolio's murder. The endless circle turned again. One body replaced another. Every loss demanded retribution. Every act of vengeance sowed the next. And this brings everything back to Alicia Andrews. The central question now becomes, what evidence truly ties this 22-year-old woman, someone with no known gang connections or violent record, to such a coordinated assassination? That's what prosecutors have been attempting to prove inside the courtroom. Their case relies heavily on digital breadcrumbs and human testimony. The surviving witnesses from that morning and the phone data investigators say expose her active role in planning the ambush. According to the state, these records show she wasn't an innocent observer but a deliberate participant in orchestrating murder. The trial of Alicia Andrews officially began on October 22, 2025, inside the Hillsborough County Courthouse in Tampa, overseen by Judge Michelle Sisko. It's a crucial milestone, as Andrews is the first of 5 defendants to face a jury. Her co-accused, Isaiah Chance Jr., Sean Gathright, Rashard Murphy, and Davian Murphy, are scheduled to follow in 2026, meaning this proceeding effectively serves as the prosecution's blueprint for every trial still to come. The evidence and testimonies being shown in this case are expected to be refined and repeated in the later trials, with their outcomes likely shaping plea deals for the other defendants. Now, let's focus on those co-defendants for a moment, since their alleged roles help explain Alicia's involvement in the plot. Isaiah Chance Jr., 21 years old, is identified as an ATK affiliate accused of acting as a spotter alongside Andrews, tracking Foolio's movements and relaying his location to the shooters. He's also Alicia's boyfriend, the relationship prosecutors say pulled her into the deadly conspiracy. Next is Sean Gathright, just 18, who's charged as one of the gunmen. His charges include 2 counts of premeditated first-degree murder with a firearm, 3 counts of attempted premeditated murder, and 1 for tampering with evidence. Then come the Murphy brothers. Rashard Murphy, age 30 and allegedly tied to the 1200 gang, is facing first-degree murder with a firearm, while his younger brother, Davian, 27, a known 1200 gang associate, is charged with premeditated murder plus 3 counts of attempted murder. The stakes are highest for Davian, who is facing the death penalty, making his situation even more severe than Alicia's, if that's even possible. Before we dive into what witnesses said on the stand, it's important to understand the pre-trial decisions that shaped everything that came after. Jury selection wrapped up earlier that same week before the trial began, and 2 pivotal rulings from Judge Sisko would go on to define the defense's entire approach. The first motion involved the defense's request to present evidence of domestic abuse between Andrews and Isaiah Chance Jr. as part of a duress defense. That motion was denied because Florida law doesn't allow such a claim in capital murder cases. The ruling was devastating for the defense team, stripping away their ability to argue that Alicia acted out of fear or control, manipulated by an abusive partner into something she never intended. Instead, her lawyers were forced to rely solely on the claim that she had no knowledge whatsoever of any planned crime. A fragile defense when prosecutors say she appeared at every key location that night.
Is that Xavier Edwards?
Yes.
You saw him covered in blood?
Yes.
All right, so let me talk to you about Xavier Edwards. I don't know if we talked about him yet. So Xavier Edwards was also there at the clubs with you all?
Yes.
And he was driving the Dodge Charger coming from the clubs to the hotel?
Yes.
But the prosecution scored a major advantage too. The court granted their motion to introduce prior gang-related murders as evidence of motive. This meant jurors would hear the history of the decade-long conflict between KTA and ATK, the trail of deaths that led to Foolio's killing and the violent environment driving this feud. That context allowed the state to frame the shooting as a deliberate, well-organized mission of revenge rather than a rash outburst. On the first day of trial, both sides delivered their opening statements, offering wildly different versions of the same night. Assistant State Attorney Scott Harmon, speaking for the prosecution, called the ambush a calculated act of warfare, describing it as a coordinated execution plotted by Andrews and her co-defendants. His opening argument painted a vivid picture of a team following Foolio's every move, saying Andrews acted as a tracker, feeding the shooters live updates through her phone. Harmon promised the jury that phone logs, tower pings, security video, and Andrews' own post-arrest lies would prove she knowingly took part in a planned murder. He argued that even though Alicia Andrews never fired a gun, her role was absolutely crucial, Without her surveillance and real-time communication, the shooters could never have carried out such a precise attack. But defense attorney Leif Malcolm told an entirely different story. He insisted Andrews was no gang member and had no awareness of any plan. To her, the trip to Tampa was supposed to be a reconciliation with her controlling boyfriend, Isaiah Chance Jr. Malcolm stressed that Alicia wasn't dressed like the masked gunman, had no weapon links, and that the lead investigator lacked sufficient homicide experience. His plea to the jury was to see her as another victim, a manipulated young woman blindsided by her partner's actions. Then came the first witness, whose identity was shielded for safety. She was a hotel guest who had partied with Foolio earlier that evening. The woman recalled attending the same Airbnb pool event broken up by police, then following the group to local clubs before returning to the hotel. From the restroom, she heard between 10 and 30 seconds of gunfire. What stood out most was her surprising personal link to the larger feud. She once dated Trayvon Bullard, young Guinea's brother, who was killed in the 2018 ambush that ignited years of bloodshed between the two sides. She firmly denied any personal gang connections and made it clear she had never met Andrews. The next witness, whose identity was also protected, had been a passenger inside Foolio's vehicle during the ambush. This testimony carried immense emotional weight because it captured the pure chaos and confusion of the shooting. The witness recalled dozing off in the car before being jolted awake by the sudden crash, at first assuming they'd been in a traffic accident. "The first thing I saw was Theo lying there," the witness said. "I thought it was just a wreck until I noticed the bullet holes and the driver bleeding and screaming." This person also confirmed not knowing Andrews, a detail that defense attorneys highlighted as proof that Alicia wasn't directly tied to Foolio's crew. The third witness, again under protective status, had been in a nearby car when gunfire erupted after leaving a nightclub. They couldn't pinpoint the exact direction of the shots but immediately flagged down police while fleeing the area. Their statement helped frame the overall environment, admitting that while they weren't personally affiliated, Jacksonville's rap scene was steeped in rivalries between 6-block KTA and ATK, saying, "Everyone from our city raps about enemies and death, but I don't involve myself in that." The fourth and most emotional witness was identified as Vandia Norris, Foolio's cousin and the man driving the car when the attack began. Norris was hit in both the arm and shoulder during the gunfire and had to steer the vehicle while praying he'd survive. When prosecutors displayed hospital photos of his wounds, Norris broke down crying, prompting Judge Sisko to pause the proceedings. His account was pivotal, linking Jones directly to KTA and his lyrical taunts toward ATK, grounding the motive behind the hit. The fifth and sixth witnesses to testify were Tampa police officers who arrived first on the scene. Officer Brian Godcharles described finding handgun casings scattered throughout the lot but no rifle shells, due to the brass catches the attackers had installed on their rifles. He walked jurors through the photos he'd taken that night, images revealing shattered glass, bullet holes, and the destruction left behind. Officer Michael Fusco of the University of South Florida Police testified next, explaining that a passing driver alerted him to gunfire around 4:42 a.m. He rushed to the hotel and confirmed there were no signs of life inside Foolio's car. During these testimonies, prosecutors presented multiple angles of surveillance footage, video that could prove catastrophic for the defense. The clips came from various sources, including hotel security feeds and, notably, a Tesla Sentry Mode system, which clearly captured one of the masked gunmen sprinting between cars to take his firing position. After the sixth witness, court was adjourned for the day. When proceedings resumed on October 23, 2025, the focus shifted toward additional witnesses and evidence. Although detailed transcripts from Day 2 aren't yet widely available, reports confirm that prosecutors plan to examine digital data, including phone messages and GPS records, showing how the suspects allegedly coordinated throughout the night. The state also intended to call more witnesses who were either survivors or bystanders, aiming to paint a clearer picture of the ambush within its gang context. Alongside those testimonies, investigators are expected to present forensic proof, handgun casings recovered at the site, bullet-damaged vehicles, and the notable absence of rifle shells thanks to the brass catches. Together, prosecutors argue, these details reveal careful planning rather than chaos. The trial is set to move into its third day on Friday, October 25, 2025. As the case unfolds, it continues to raise deeper social and moral questions. How culpability is defined, what accountability looks like for someone who never pulled the trigger, and how gender dynamics influence perceptions of guilt in violent crime. Was Alicia Andrews a mastermind, a manipulated accomplice, or simply a pawn caught in a feud far larger than herself? Drop your opinions below, and stay tuned. We'll keep tracking every major update as the courtroom drama unfolds.